bang on.
Right. Okay. Well, let's look at the recent COVID situation and how that has impacted how companies are managing this liability. Especially, I imagine that in the travel space, it's anything that was projected forward suddenly has to be reprojected. And I'm also hearing that some companies are doing multiple projections, trying to figure out what is actually going to be the future. How are you seeing companies relate to COVID and the way that they should be thinking about their loyalty program?
Yeah. So let's start maybe with the liability and how companies are managing that. So I would say on the whole, unfortunately, loyalty programs aren't like the best at predicting redemption costs, right? And I think one of the big reasons for that is, one, it's just difficult to do that. The nature of the problems, you got to predict over a very long horizon, like member behavior, redemption behavior, a long horizon. This is not particularly easy.
Like 30 years, or what is a
long
long
for
horizon?
Sure. Yeah, I've done an analysis where I've seen points earned 30 years ago now getting redeemed, right? Which is, there's not a lot, but like there's a long tail there, right?
Does that incentivize companies to expire them so that they can just kind of take them off the books too?
Yeah, companies want to expire them to be able to take them off the books. It makes things a little bit cleaner. We're kind of seeing a bit of a reversal now where it kind of comes and goes. Now we're kind of seeing a bit of a reversal where people are like, now let's make the expiration rules a little bit less. Let's relax them a little bit. Maybe even let's get rid of them entirely. So it kind of comes in waves. But that's definitely part of it. But yeah, generally speaking, it's a difficult problem, and frankly, it's just not the exciting or sexy part of loyalty programs, right? Like people running loyalty programs, they want to think about customer engagement, customer experience, building relationships, emotional ties, like all of these things, which are absolutely the right things to be thinking about, right? And so I don't blame them for not wanting to really focus and spend a lot of time predicting redemption costs. But unfortunately, it's boring, but it's an important component of the business model as well, right? So what we end up seeing often is, it's somebody with zero actuarial training is trying to cobble together an Excel spreadsheet to try to manage a $100 million or $1 billion liability, and it's often it's just going to be very difficult for them to kind of get it right. And I would argue not really reasonable to expect that they would without the right training and expertise, right? So that's kind of been a challenge for a lot of loyalty programs, even pre-COVID, right? And I think one of the challenging things is the scary part is a lot of programs don't even realize that they're not predicting redemption costs well, because they don't have somebody like really diving into the model and tearing it apart that has the appropriate experience and expertise, right? So they're not really picking up on the signals that, hey, this may not necessarily be accurate or reasonable, right? And I think that's kind of a challenge just from the get-go. And then now COVID comes in and blows everything else up on top of that, right? And makes it even more difficult. So now we're in this situation where even the best of models are like not going to do a really great job, right? Unfortunately. And so we kind of got to, no model is going to do well. You're in the situation where it's inevitable. You got to set assumptions. And what it comes down to is just trying to set the smartest assumptions possible. That's frankly the challenge, right? And a really good practical way to do this is to recognize that not all members are created equal. They're all going to be affected in different ways by the impact of the pandemic. And so this is where you basically have to set different assumptions for different groups of members. And this is, again, where CLV comes back into play and is really, really helpful. Customer lifetime value fundamentally is it's a tool that allows you to predict future behavior from members. And so it's a tool that allows you to kind of segment your members out into, let's just say, 10 groups where each group has a very distinct behavior, right? And then you can start setting different assumptions for each segment, right? And some segments are going to be easier than others to set assumptions for. So usually on the extremes, it's a bit easier to set assumptions. Like highly engaged members, they're probably still going to redeem their points. It's going to be a little bit delayed. Whereas on the other end, really unengaged members probably just going to expire all of their points, right? So it's really the middle. Yeah, right.
Are you also, because of the uncertainty, are you also updating the models more frequently than you might have in the past?
Yeah, you have to You have to basically like set your assumptions and then monitor them pretty frequently, because you know the world we're living in right now is so fluid and dynamic. Like you're not going to get your assumptions right, so every month that goes by, you're getting more information and learning more. So you got to tweak those assumptions on an ongoing basis.
Are you correlating them directly to the cases or deaths? Or like, I imagine there's probably a sense of, as cases go up, there's a certain I guess it depends on the industry, but if it were the travel industry, then I would immediately be thinking that as cases go up, maybe my redemptions go down. But if my business is e-commerce, maybe as cases go up, my redemptions go up.
It varies. You got to take your professional judgment, right, into play to try to figure out like what assumptions do I want to set, right? Part of it too is you want to have stability in your estimates. Because particularly when it comes to financial reporting, you don't want to be jerking the numbers around a lot from period to period to period. If there's a reasonable set of assumptions to make that suggest, hey, over the long horizons, things are going to kind of play out in this fashion, there's a good reason to be able to set your assumptions that way.
So it's better to have a straight line and then some under over to determine, okay, well, you could justify the under over based on this factor, as opposed to moving the slope of the line over and over again.
Yeah. So you'd be a little bit cautious and kind of really jerking it around over time, kind of waiting for more information to emerge over time.
Yeah.